guys, Metagame Monday. You know the drill. 5 legacy challenges, 5 top 8s, 40 decks. Let's get into the action here. We're about a month out from Eternal Weekend US. So basically everything that goes on right now is going to be one step closer to Eternal Weekend. So Metagame Monday, as was the point from the get-go, is to be ahead of these trends so you can make good adjustments in the week to come, do better, go back, adjust, do even better, and that kind of stuff, right? So let's take a look at the 5 decks that actually ended up winning challenges, because as we all know, first place in these challenges, it means a lot when it comes to inspiration. Lots of people don't really have a favorite deck, so they're just going to go for whatever won the last tournament. So this is important. First off, I want to say 2 copies of Jeskai Wizards won a challenge this weekend, or this past week, rather. That is crazy. I love that deck. I think it has great tools against the field. And with 2 challenge wins, like that is not a coincidence, right? That deck has legs if you can play fast enough, essentially. I think it has great tools, but more about those tools later. 1 copy of Eldrazi Aggro took it down. Eldrazi Aggro is just, pressure, chalice for 1, keep up the engine running, and yeah, this deck is super dangerous. It even has a solid late game with, inevitability from Kozilek's Command. I think this deck is sweet to have in the metagame, and I actually like the aggressive version now slightly more than the previous green version. Then, fan favorite, Cephalid Breakfast took down a challenge. That deck always sees a lot of play. Sometimes, now to mid-range is the best version. Sometimes it's this version. But I think the fact that you combine, threatening a turn 2 kill with the solid shell of, plows, ponders, brainstorms, forces, that kind of deal, I think that goes a long way. So yeah, great job to the Breakfast pilot taking this down. Then we have Fast Reanimator back on the menu. That actually ended up splitting the finals. So yeah, who would have thunk it, right? A 0.5 deck facing off in the finals. That's the dream. So yeah, these are the 5 winner decks. Quick message here, guys. I just wanted to remind you that my Metifi is home of not only Legacy Champions, but also the thoughts of Legacy Champions. So we have these awesome guest primers from the best on their respective decks, showing all of their insights, all the tricks. So whether you want to master the deck or beat the deck, my Metifi is the place to be. So go for your Booksmart Baron membership and save 50% with code ECO50. Now let's get back to winning in Magic, what I do best. All right. So let's have a look at the graveyard column here. 7 copies of Reanimator, which is a little bit surprising. This deck has been converting lower than its metagame share, which is super rare. Just remember the last couple of months, it's been the opposite for sure. Single copy of Oopsal Spells, by the way, kind of a similar axis as Fast Reanimator. But also just, role player. I'm not too serious about that. But yeah, Reanimator taking a step back here, and my theory is that this is going to make players worry less about the deck in the weeks to come, which then will come back to bite them, and this deck will rise. But yeah, who knows about that? The Reanimator, obviously, the best performing deck in Legacy over such a long time. So, but yeah, don't sleep on this deck. Then it's just gonna come back even stronger. The next column here is super exciting because we have a clean split between red tempo and black tempo. So we talked about these decks before and their respective strengths, where you have the slightly higher individual card quality out of Dimir, and then you have access to better sideboard cards out of the red versions. Obviously, Core Steel Cutter, an amazing build around, just can go wide and blank some spot removal, etc. It's kind of like the ankle of Kaito in the Dimir deck. I think it's pretty cool to see. So whether you need Meltdown, Pyroblast, Price of Progress, that kind of deal in the metagame, or you need, hard removal like Fatal Push against bigger creatures, or you need to finish off Ancient Tomb players with Lightning Bolt. It's kind of some of those thoughts that you're having when you're picking between those 2 versions. And then, interestingly enough, against each other, the black one, I feel like is favored. 3-4 Nethergoyfs, Barrogoyfs, Bowmasters. Yeah, those cards are just a lot of trouble for very little investment. Next column here is combo, and this is actually smaller than it's used to. Like usually there is some sneak attack deck or some doomsday deck or storm deck in here, but yeah, not today. Just Mystic Forge, and this is inevitably very good for the Forge players because it's hard to justify running weird combo hate if that's the only combo deck out there. It's also hard to justify running stuff like Null Rod if there's no other decks that Null Rod is good against. What's not hard is to run some more Consigned Memories, because that card is pretty awesome with both against Mono Red and Eldrazi here in the metagame. So basically Mystic Forge these days are going to be facing Forces and Consigns and Wastelands. And then sometimes you throw in a little bit of Thoughtseize, and that's kind of annoying. Then there's super rare, Zenith for oof scenarios. Yeah, stuff like that, essentially. So yeah, I really like how Mystic Force is positioned, and this is exactly what you want out of it. You don't want this to be 7 copies on a long list and everybody, needs to take it super seriously. You want to be working a little bit in the shadows with a deck like that. All right, next column is Chalice of the Void. We already talked about Eldrazi aggro, and now let's talk a little bit about Mono Red Prison. Why is Mono Red Prison doing so well? So Mono Red Prison does quite a few things very well. So it plays Chalice, so it's putting a lot of emphasis on if you rely too much on 1-drops, you will be in trouble, right? It plays a lot of Blood Moon effects, which means if you're a 3-color deck, you can be in super trouble. Even very early Blood Moon against 2-color decks can be devastating, as I learned firsthand yesterday. And then it does a third thing that is very, very underrated, because remember, we talked a lot about the rise of creatures, right? We talked about, oh, look at this energy deck, look at this Cradle Control deck, even normal elves, and Death and Taxes won the showcase. We need to play Sweepers. I even played Dread of Night this week. That's how far it went. So now, what is Mono Red doing just automatically? It plays Fury, right? Fury, incredible against small creatures. So if Mono Red is a big part of the metagame, and your deck is bad against Fury, you should probably play something else, right? So Mono Red is actually holding the format in a little bit of a chokehold here between Chalice, Blood Moon, and Fury. That's a lot of cards. And its natural predator, Show and Tell, is just not a very exciting choice into a field of, tons of Forces and Thoughtseizes and Pyroblasts. So yeah, Mono Red Prison, good job to these players. It certainly made the opposition pay. Next up, the aforementioned creatures. So yeah, Death and Taxes won the showcase. That was incredible. This deck wants to play longer games. This deck wants to prey on some tempo decks and overcompensate on the graveyard. Then hopefully there aren't too many weird combo decks to worry about aside from that. Mystic Forge is bad news though, but in smaller numbers it's certainly workable. Then we have Green-White Depths. Always good to see Knight of the Reliquary. I remember some funny memes like, oh, Nadu's obsoleting Knight of the Reliquary, and you can never register these cards as long as Nadu exists. That was good comedy, especially for this player who made the finals with their Green-White Dark Depths deck. You can also see that it's actually, Merit Lage is actually pretty well positioned between hardly any plows here in the winner's metagame. So yeah, love to see it. That deck has so many must-kill creatures between Reclaimer and Knight and Zeniths. Yeah, super annoying deck. Then we had a cool artifact aggro deck sporting both the Pinnacle Emissary and the 3/4 flyer with Affinity even. Patchwork Automaton, like really putting on pressure. And in a world of very little Meltdown and Null Rod, I think that could be a sweet strategy. I need to learn more about that. We already talked a little bit about Jeskai Wizards, but yeah, I like this deck a lot. Just check, have a look at this list, right? This list of boxes that it's checking, like great mana base, great removal. So it's just, when I mean great removal, it's like super flexible between Prismatic Ending, Flame of Anor, stuff like that, so we can easily kill Chalice. Our deck naturally plays well against Blood Moon and Chalice to begin with. And then we have some universal removal spells to make sure the game goes on. Then we hopefully can finish with Fourth Eolingus or the Murktide that I love to play in the deck. Last up is going to be Lance. Lance is a deck that is very well positioned, but it's very hard to play. It's not something people necessarily it's not natural, right? You need to really study the deck or master it over a long period of time. I know for sure that I'm reading through the huge primer that Sprouts did for my Metifi. I think you get a lot of insights there to either play the deck or, in my case, fare better against the deck. So I think study the opposition from the inside is a very powerful tool, because different point of views, you learn about pain points, you learn about the most important cards, you learn about most normal play patterns, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a game where that is actually helpful to determine whether you go into door A or door B with a tough decision, fork in the road. So yeah, Lance, very hard to play. I would imagine maybe like 5 people in the world can actually find a top 8 with this deck, but I don't know. Could be over exaggerating there. Point is, it's very hard to play, and is when it's seen playing these numbers, it's not really worth preparing for other decks, and that's a perfect place for a deck like Lance. It's like, the spot for Mystic Forge is very similar. Or let's imagine you're the only player in the world playing Mono Red Prison. Like, that's the dream, right? But yeah, that was my analysis here. Prediction time is Reanimator will trend upwards and Red Prison will trend downwards. So yeah, with that said, let me know your prediction for the week to come, and then we check back on things next Monday. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you back on the channel soon.